Bosses of Reddit, what is the most NSFW reason you had to fire someone? Fired a forklift driver once for snorting a Xanax off the back of the urinal. He literally just crushed it up and snorted it with me standing right next to him washing my hands in the sink. Stupidity really knows no limits. An ex-con fricka KFC, my first job, threatened to lock my boss, assistant manager, and a regular employee in the freezer and then burn the place down. The employee quit on the spot and said assistant manager called me in without telling me this. I came in and my friend, the employee, texted me, "Don't come in. John is ducking crazy." What happened? He then told me all about it. I left the building, called the manager and regional manager and told them what happened. They both came in and fired the frickin' assistant manager on the spot. On a positive note, 2 months later, a man broke into the back door of the restaurant and held me up at gunpoint, robbing us of the last night's deposit. He moved carefully, almost perfectly avoiding the cameras. I bet a ton of money it was him. Duck you, John, you piece of it. I used to work at a radio station and had to fire a DJ because he had 6 on the air, but he would not have been caught if he were competent. So that was the official reason. He had not muted the studio microphones while music or other programs were playing, so anyone listening could hear them having 6 in the background. Muting those mics is Radio 101. He was just lowering the mic levels. Still audible. Wasn't me that did the firing, but an overnight cleaner at a hotel I used to work at snuck his girlfriend in and got a blowjob in full view of the security cameras. One of the guards told me that he even looked at the camera and gave a thumbs up. Speaking for my local Taco Bell, they fired this tweaker for changing clothes, completely naked, in the small hallway near the bathrooms. Dude was jerking it in his cubicle. Builder wasn't wearing his safety hat several times after I demanded him to wear it. It's literally NSFW if you work without a hat. I had to politely let go of one of my security staffers who went up to a pretty famous animated show creator while drunk and told her to her face that he wants to destroy her in bed. Not particularly NSFW, but still entertaining. Had a group of customers being rude to my staff. This was at 4 AM with no management in the building. BTW. Staff member told the customers to leave. Words got heated and tempers flared. So my staff member climbed on top of the counter and was waving steak knives to get the customers to leave. When I fired him, the staff member asked why he was the only one getting fired. Well, Bobby, you were the only one waving steak knives around. Masturbing at their cubicle. I have had to fire someone for this reason more than once. Also once fired someone for peeing on their boss. I think anytime someone is fired it can be considered NSFW. I just posted this last week under the same thread basically, but here it is again. An employee constantly masturbated in his cubicle, under his desk. The reason I say constantly is because when he was actually caught by a female employee and reported, another boss went to look at his cubicle. What he found was absolutely appalling. Under his desk there was cum everywhere. The guy always shot his gentleman's relish right under his desk so that it would hit the wood. He worked there for over 10 years. The D-spit was so thick after all the countless times of ejaculation and parts of it were black and growing mold. He covered the smell by always having some type of air freshener going. We should have taken the hint sooner. In the end he was fired. TLDR. 10 years of gentleman's relish being spread on a desk. Cumbox Desk 2.0. We had a network share run out of space. It was huge, and we couldn't figure out what would eat up all the space at first. Started scanning people's home folders. When I found this guy had gigabytes and gigabytes of porn. This was back before we blocked websites. The file names were all we needed to know what it was. Warning. This is super gross. Half the people I tell this to lose their lunch. My employee was in her late 40s and overweight. She would stick her hand down her pants, front, pick a little, bring up a scab, place it on her desk, and when she had a few she would eat them. Luck for me I worked for a large call center and as a male it was not proper for me to talk about such matters. Our HR rep had a talk and gave her a warning. It's a biohazard. She did it again and got fired. I didn't do the firing, but a waitress got fired from a bar I used to work at because she called in for her shift Thursday night and said she had lost her keys and would not be able to find them until Monday. Having a passions party in the data center. With live examples. Try to explain to a 62-year-old grandmotherly HR director what a passion party is with a straight face. I dare you. I was the manager of a Journeys shoe store for 2 years in a college town. I hired a girl that would occasionally come in for her shift wearing a skirt that was just long enough to cover her ass while she stood completely still. Any movement and you saw cheek. So anyway, you are always on ladders or bending over as an employee of a shoe store, and it just wasn't something I could allow. I was 19 years old and I may have enjoyed it, but my regional manager would not have. I told her multiple times it wasn't okay and sent her home. Well, eventually I got a customer complaint on my store claiming I saw her entire ass, angry mom, and I had to can her. Not very NSFW I guess, but it's the best I've got. Cannot believe someone hasn't mentioned Facebook stupidity. A nurse calls in sick around the holidays knowing she had responsibilities with lower than normal staffing. Promptly posts on FB packed and ready to go to 4 days of fun, and some her co-workers saw this, printed it, and informed HR. Welcome back, you lying itch, now turn in your badge and keys. Your patients are better off without you. Not me personally, but a co-worker was fired for storing kiddie porn on his work laptop. Sick bastard. We had to put a strong padlock on our storage area because we caught so many of our employees going in there to have a six, or drink, or whatever they wanted to do while avoiding our cameras. Have personally fired both of 2 different couples who were caught there. I worked as a manager of a small movie theater in college. We hired a teen mom to work the floor and she was great. A little dumb. But that didn't matter. After about 6 months on the job, she was 3 hours late to shifts 3 days in a row. So, on the 3rd day we had to fire her. When we sat her down and asked her why she was so late, her explanation was that she and her fiancé registered sign believed she was sleep ducking their roommate. Her solution was to try and stay up all night to stop herself from having sex with this guy. She ended up falling asleep in the early morning and missing her alarm clock. I had to fire someone for having sex on his desk with the cleaning woman. I had a night shift employee who was having sex in the dark room, ancient photo technology, Google it, with another employee. Oh wait, he didn't get fired for that. Instead my boss threatened to fire me for mentioning it. Companies are funny the way everyone tries to cover their ass, aren't they? Worked at a Wendy's. Fired a guy for pissing in the romaine lettuce bucket. Technically didn't even have the authority. Just knew what had to be done and stepped in. Like a boss. 2 people at my old job got caught ducking each other in the bathroom. They were both married to other people in the workplace. The best part is, management didn't fire them for ducking at work. They got fired because they didn't clock off their job codes. She kept on taking nip slip selfies. I used to know a guy who was a manager at a Subway. Said he walked into the cooler one day and found his female employee going to town on herself with a cucumber. Fired her on the spot. I asked if he let her keep the cucumber, in case there was an emotional attachment, but he said he threw it out. A cook I used to work with got fired for selling the manager weed laced with heroin. I absolutely cannot understand how he thought that might be a good idea. Having sexual intercourse with an inmate. Totally illegal. I had to fire a guy because he put a ladder on top of 2 ladders to get to a high spot to clean. Not me who did the firing. Had a client that called me in one day because their T1 connection was lagging badly according to employees. I provided their server hardware, but their internet provider said nothing was wrong. So I offered to look at it, logged into the router and watched packets for about 5 minutes, traced the LAN IP, and told the boss, and we approached the employee. He was torrenting porn onto an external drive hidden in a drawer. Why he was doing that at work I have no idea. I guess he didn't have internet, or it was slow, or capped at home. Boss took him in the office and gave him a written reprimand. Didn't fire him, and he was back to work the next day. They called me back about 3 weeks later to see if I could look at it again. This time it wasn't as bad, but there were spikes of lag for sure. The guy had ran the USB cable behind his desk and into the drawer and capped the download speed so it wouldn't be noticeable. but his cap was set to about half the T1. When you had 15 employees doing stuff on it, you'd still notice. This time he was escorted out of the building. It only took me about a minute to see what the problem was too. The LAN IPs for the computers didn't change. You'd think after getting the written the first time you'd take what you had and live with it. Nope. There was a supervisor who had a side job as an owner of a cleaning maid service. Apparently the girls would clean houses topless and offered other services he was mums on. One day he was at work, he got bored, so he called one of his girls to come up and she blew him in the break room. This came out during an investigation on possible fraudulent activities he was doing at work. He didn't fess up to the fraudulent activities but definitely did to the other activities. He was fired. Obviously. Dude sexually harassed another dude. Specifically, he grabbed his balls and tongue kissed him. I lost 2 employees that day. Dude at my work was about to be fired, so he hid in the back of his lease vehicle, turned it in, can't keep lease if not employee, and quit. I'm a security department manager at an art museum. The museum hosts a kids camp for elementary schoolers every summer. These kids are essentially given free reign of the museum at certain times in order to get inspired. We had one of our officers, on his break, use the loading dock computer for pornography. This is a high foot traffic area for these kids. And the worst part, we had an IT intern from a local middle school doing updates on that computer and he was the one who discovered it. Upon checking with the IT records he was fired immediately. Edit, spelling and grammar. Me. For licking a spoon that I was about to wash. Teenage me was painfully stupid and ugh. A buddy of mine was a kitchen cleaner in a diner. He was only 16 at the time and was asked rudely to mop up the floor during supper hours. After mixing bleach into the bucket, I believe he added another cleaner that contained ammonia to the bleach water mix. Chemical reaction and toxic fumes everywhere. Do not do this. You can die from the fumes. The hazard required the evacuation of the entire restaurant. He was fired on the spot. When he asked for his final paycheck he was told to go duck himself. Was a manager at a Starbucks in a grocery store in high school. A female employee, 20, had faked having cancer for the previous 9 months, going so far as having shaved her head and wearing wigs. Only found out when her mother came to the grocery store and an employee attempted to sympathize with her regarding her daughter's condition. Ironically, myself and another employee had both lost our mothers to cancer and I actually think this was the reason behind her ridiculous scheme as she often, prior to the whole ordeal, asked questions about it. To this day I can't comprehend the whole ordeal without coming to the conclusion that she was simply mentally ill. One of the tellers got fired on his first week for peeing his pants and messing up the carpet. Jerking off to My Little Pony without closing his door. I once had to fire a kid for bringing a loaded gun to work. He had no intentions of harming anyone. He just wanted to show me so I knew how cool he was. I emptied the gun and fired him right on the spot. Here is my story. Recently divorced, I was a shift leader at the local Ruby Tuesday. I was enjoying the nights of closing seeing as I worked with a lot of college kids and we would typically drink while we closed the building and even stay after closing at the bar and drink. We always brought our own or bought the liquor so we were not stealing any. One Sunday, before alcohol sales were allowed in my bumbuck of a town, I was not thinking and purchased a drink for me and a girl that I had been seeing. Needless to say, it raised a red flag in their system, and I was fired promptly the following week. I'm sad it wasn't for me being caught on camera the couple of times I had one of the servers face down in a booth going to town. It would have been so much more epic. Still dating this one. Male employee masturbating in the women's bathroom. Funniest part was after we slip served him. He went back to the scene of the crime and tried to leave us an upper decker, only to drop the toilet cistern top on the floor and shatter it to pieces. We had a young man who posted a public message with 2 pictures on social media to someone about how horny he was. One picture was a standard selfie pose with his security badge in full view. It is bad enough that we knew he picture was taken in one of our office restrooms, but damn, the genius didn't even bother to take off his badge or at least flip the side that identified him. The next picture posted on the same thread was of his delayed on heat countertop. We found out because Einstein added a manager to his profile. Facepalm. I fired a guy for peeing in the floor drain of the deli at Walmart. This thread made me realize hire and fire are so similar in spelling and have opposite meanings. Watched one guy get fired for not wearing his seatbelt in a forklift. Sexual harasser. To protect the innocent I had to can him without discussing the harassment. He was a IT manager anyway. I had to clean his office and give him his belongings in a gas station parking lot. He brought his wife and she proceeded to light me up verbally and get in my face and threaten me. I just smiled and thought if you only knew. They were a match made in heaven. Worked for a now bankrupt Canadian telecom equipment manufacturer in one of their US offices. Late 90s when video conferencing was expensive and companies had one entire room dedicated to it. The connections only worked to other company offices. You would see the other office on a big projection screen and they would see you. It was common for people to turn off the system by only turning off the screen and not by actually disconnecting. That just means that you can't see them, but they can see you. So, this couple are working late one evening, because you had to schedule lab time, and they go into the video conference room where they proceed to get frisky. Very frisky. You know where this is going. Physics was broadcast to a conference room in Canada which adjoined the same lab in Canada, in which another group of engineers were working. Only, their screen was on. Next day, the two were canned. Everyone splits the cost of a water delivery service. Last week everyone was paying up the person in charge. Everything was going swell until I heard the scream. Here a co-worker settled an argument by jizzing on the $5 bill and placing it in an envelope. Jizzvenge. Had no choice but to can the guy after making him apologize to the woman with the jizz fingers. Sorry, I'm not a boss and I'm late to the party, but an old employee at the gas station I work at was fired because he was having sex with a homeless woman in the middle of the night and giving her free beer as a reward. Was a boss. Got fired from Target for banging the cute customer service girl on the conference room table. Didn't know there was a camera in there. Caught one of our temporary workers jerking off in the bathroom locker room. This guy was just sitting there on a bench out in the open. Cell phone with porn in hand with a single earbud in his ear. My company's culture is certainly unique, and our VP exclaimed, "What's the big deal?" He was taking a break. Soon, news got around and we had no choice but to get rid of him. Asking for girls' numbers on a normal basis. He worked as a guard in an abortion clinic. While asking for the numbers though, he was caught watching guy porn, which also got him fired. The guy pissed every time he went out to smoke, on the side of the building. Speaking for my boss, but an old employee was using their company laptop and email address to set up meetings with hookers. Not exactly fired, but a guy once showed up at a friend's workplace dead, odd on the front step when he went in to open. I am not really a boss. I have 2 employees under me and we all just be around in this little building until anything happens. But I am head of safety and security and am able to fire people. I had to fire 2 employees for raping the same dog at the same time. That scene was ducking weird and the dog ended up with ducked up hind legs and is unable to walk correctly. Worked in a video store. Rewinding VHS and helping customers find the right movie was the main thing. The manager always asked if anyone need to use the bathroom before they left. He seemed to take greater interest in asking the girls this question. Anyways, a girl is going to the bathroom and notices a tiny pinhole camera that ran flush with the surface of the wall. Fired and now a register Red 6 offender. Police searched his house finding hundreds of recordings. Usaru NSFW. We had a dude whip out his D and piss in a cup in the employee cafeteria. He then proceeded to attempt to pour it down the drain of the soda fountain. Shaving his body hair in a food manufacturing plant. I'm a site manager for valet and an employee was caught jacking off in a client's vehicle. Used to run my own pressure washing business. For those of you who don't know, I cleaned the ventilation systems in restaurants. Well, most of the time these jobs would be after the business closed. So once in a while when I knew the owner well enough, she would let us make food or whatever they had. Gained a lot of weight because of that. Well, I scored a contract with the local country club which was amazing. So it was usually me and 2 to 3 other guys. Now here comes the reason for firing one of them. After we were done cleaning the country club, we are loading everything up and notice one guy is lagging inside. So I send a guy after him and he rolls out the shop. vac we used to suck up all the greasy cleaner filled water. Well, he was struggling to roll it out and we had just seen him dump it. So I don't think anything about it till he says we are eating good tonight. I was like, what do you mean? He proceeds to open the lid of the vacuum and it's laden down with shrimp, steak and all kinds of other food. 1. It took a lot for me not to puke that he put it in there. 2. I had to go inside to the CC and explain what happened. 3. I fired him on the spot because I ended up losing the contract because of him and not getting paid. TL. DR. Guy fills dirty greasy vacuum with food from country club. I almost puke and fire him on the spot. Masturbating while in the middle of a meeting. I used to work at a grocery store when I was a teenager. There was a manager that was fired for making sexy time with one of the checkers in the dairy cooler. He was in his 30s and she, checker, was 17 at the time. Taking a dump on the floor of the restroom.